What was once a cornfield now sits a sprawling campus known as Redemption Christian Church. In small-town rural southern Indiana 23 years ago, an upstart church began with a handful of people, and God has grown it to an impactful church of more than 2,000 with campuses in 3 towns. How did this happen? What did God use to not just make a church grow, but create a movement of Christ followers who are brought into the mission of loving God, loving people, and changing the world? This is the Redemption Story, a series of programs in association with Redemption Christian Church and the Kevin R. Smith Company that attempts to tell a bit of the story of what God has done and is doing at and through Redemption Christian Church. Welcome back, Coach Mattingly. Daryl, thanks for being back again. And, last week we heard, Coach, you talked a bit about the Grief Share with Daryl and that program, and as it's been launched at Redemption. I want to take a little bit of time. Daryl, through a large part of a redemption story, continuously points to, in a very positive way, how the mission is to take it out beyond the church walls. There's opportunities to do that, not only as an extension arm of the church, but in our careers, where sometimes we feel the natural world around us is kind of fighting that piece. You have that chance every day. You serve as a head baseball coach at Southridge High School, but even in your career. Talk a little bit about what you have found to work for you in that type of aspect.
Well, I appreciate that, because I think from a redemption standpoint, that's, we love worshiping corporately, but our mission that Jesus gave us was to go out and to live it out every day, so that people see Jesus through what we do. And I think coaching, from the standpoint, I love kids, and it gives us an opportunity to, and me in particular, is to live that out in front of these young people, where their time is spent so much throughout the day on social media and being influenced by fleshly, worldly type of influences, where what we try to do is, and again, public school, we have our limitations on what we can do, but what we try to do is just be an example, and show them what it would look like. And in sports, we have an opportunity to be calm. I think, and a lot of times we react with anger, or we react with vengeance, or that sort of thing. And sometimes you want to show your players and the young people around you that it's okay to react with calmness, and it's okay to, when bad things happen, you don't have to lash out. You can just accept it, absorb it, and then move on and grow from it. And I think that's, like, when I look at it, my ability to influence them, that's what I probably, I spend the most time concentrating on, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I see you doing, and I always talk to, when I've had teams, always talk to because I've been at the freshman level, which is not a win first level, it's a develop kids level, and I always tell the parents at the parent meeting, hey, I'm here for 3 purposes. The first one is to help make your son a better player and hopefully person. That's the number one goal, build that character and things that sports can be a great tool to do. And second, I always said, then I'm here to help the program. Like this, I worked for, at that time, Jasper basketball program. I'm here to help make it the best program. So if it's develop skills that you need for the JV and varsity, whatever. And then finally, third, it's to win. Because I don't want to be a part of any organization that doesn't want to win. I mean, I'm a Reds fan, so I guess I am technically. But anyway, so that's important too. But it's just third on the list of things. And I think I see that, like, winning is really highly important and valuable to you guys. Southridge has great sports programs, but that's not the highest.
Yeah. I mean, you compete to win. That's why you compete. But ultimately, that is a result of preparation, and it's a result of just being on that given day, you just performed better than the other team. Because there's times where we lose, and I feel like we've played to our best ability, and our kids carried themselves, and they respected the game, and they respected their opponent, and just as we want them to do, and you just end up short on the scoreboard. And so ultimately, we're going to be judged not by our wins and losses, but we're going to be judged by the influence and impact and how we treated people, and we have an opportunity and responsibility to treat these young people well and give them an opportunity to grow as people, because they're going to end up being, they're going to be husbands and fathers and things, and somebody's employee, and you want them to have a foundation of character that is of high standard and high expectations, and I think ultimately that's what we do for them, or try to do anyway.
An example of that, I don't want to poke old wounds, but I remember your first opportunity for a state championship, and you guys had a real chance to win it. There was a pretty simple play that ended up being an error, cost the error, and as soon as that game was over, the first person you beeline to was that young man to comfort him, to be there for him, and that said a lot to me about your style approach of leadership and coaching. So talk about how the relationship and building the kids and every other aspect.
Thanks for bringing that one up.
Well, you got to win one after that.
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
He wrote that one down last night.
I think so. I think that was intended. That was the Wildcat coming out. But I think at that point, when you have, that was after, when we lost Lexi, perspective changed a lot. We talked last week about growth through stuff like that, but I'm not sure I was never the same coach after 2017 as I was before, right? So there was nobody hurting more than that young man, and I love that young man, and we're still, he still comes by my office, he still texts, he's a good man, and he felt worse than anybody.
Yeah.
And it was a game.
It's a game.
It's a game. And at the end of the day, his legacy is it isn't going to be that play. And I wanted him to know that, you made a mistake. It happened. You know what? You made 15 other great plays the first, and so why is the society, and we do that. We focus on the worst thing. And so for that young man, I felt like he needed comfort more than he needed a coach.
Yeah.
So that's I reacted that way. And fortunately, I reacted that way.
Yeah. And two things from that. One is always interesting. We always look to those final mistakes, final touchdown dropped, final.
It's the negative we remember.
But I mean, how many bad plays were before that we don't think about? It's that one in that moment. That's one thing I'd say. And the other thing I would say about that is, like, there is no real perfect game ever played in any sport. I mean, I know we technically have a stat for a perfect game in one sport, but it's not, even in that. And so I think it's right. Like that in that moment to help them understand this does not define you. This is not who you are. And what about all the good things that was done and that you did before that? And for some reason we remember the free throw you missed with 2 seconds left. What about the free throw somebody missed in the first half?
Right.
And we don't think about those. And so, and in life, I mean, what's great about that is when you spiritualize that and think about it from Christ's perspective, we are not judged by our worst moments, and we're not judged by our best moments. We're judged by Jesus and His blood covering us. And so, to me, that makes it then easy in life to look back and say, oh, okay, we move on. It's what you do as a result of your mistakes.
How do you respond to it? And that's what we talk to our kids all the time about. It's not what happens to us; it's how do we respond to that. Good things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen in sports and in life. And how do you respond to that? How do you, what do you turn to? And I think from what I try to, what do you turn to when things don't go your way? Do you turn to anger? Do you turn to whatever the world has to offer, or do you turn to the one who can make a difference? And do you turn to Jesus, and do you turn and rely on that it's His path, it's His way, and we're just going to trust? And that's what we try to. that's what we try to do for these young people.
Well, the two of you represent, I think, the redemption heart at its best with what you're describing and how you model and represent that. Look, I'm guilty too many times in the past 60-plus years of some of the opposite aspects that you are referencing to as a learning piece. And I just heard something today in my scripture study. Some of it I read, and some of it is more read to me in that regard, that I think really kind of symbolizes our society. When you mentioned earlier about how in public schools we're limited in some aspects. And then I jump back and think, are we in that setting? But the story went with an individual who happened to be at a conference talking to an individual who was fighting to get the Ten Commandments taken off the walls of a particular school, and talking about we got to free up our kids type of aspect. 25 minutes later, the same individual comes back and was bemoaning the fact that they've got a rise in theft in the schools. And the response was, maybe we should write on the walls, thou shalt not steal in that aspect.
Yeah.
But that's the societal metaphor, if you will, that challenges many individuals, to your point about, do we turn in the right aspect? So many times we in the natural, we turn and we do 360s. Where do I stop at in that regard?
We chase our tails and look for answers that really aren't there, or we look for answers in all the wrong places. And so we do have, we are limited in what we can do, but man, I think we have an opportunity in public schools to not settle for what society says. Daryl and I talked about this a few years ago, right after it happened. But I got a cease and desist letter from some outfit out of Wisconsin or wherever they're from. But basically, I was caught on camera praying with the team, and of course I got called to the principal's office, if you will. And I called Daryl right away, and I was angry and I wanted to lash out, but I was like, I can't. And he was like, just chill, just keep doing you, just don't react to this. Just keep trusting, and we did, and we found a way. I had a student, he actually attends Redemption now. He said, "Don't worry, Coach. They can't keep us from doing it. I'll take it." So he then would take the team and lead them in pregame prayer, and I would take the coaches, and we would go in the dugout where we were separated, but we were still able to pray to our God and pray for safety and all those things. We didn't pray for wins, but we prayed that we showed great sportsmanship and people saw us acting in a Christ-like manner to our opponents and to our into the game. And so,
and that's key. They want to bemoan that we took prayer out of schools. Listen, the only way you take prayer out of schools is to take Christ followers out of schools.
Take
as
the
long
people
as
out.
we stay in there, Christ is still present in schools. We can still pray. It just can't be organized by the school. And I think that's important to understand that we're the ones that. And you know what? When I was in school systems, if a kid wanted me to pray with them, I would do it. But I wasn't going to make a fight out of it. A public stage like you're taking, that's not a way to further the cause of Christ, in my opinion. And I think the approach is to be Jesus. And I was watching a JV football game last night, and I saw something I haven't seen in a long time. One of the opponents was down on the field cramping up. It was heat, and I saw our players walk over and do the whole push your leg back, stretch it out to their player.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, wow, you don't see that anymore, because if you look at professional or in college, it's actually protocol to walk away rather than to help. And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought, this is who we are to be as people. Don't let society drive who you are. Just go and be Jesus.
yeah.
Leave it to the child's heart. The Little League World Series, the way Florida defeated Chinese Taipei and the players going over to hug after just a brief celebration, just represents Christ perfectly with no forethought of that occurring.
Yeah. And I think too often we feel we feel like our opponents are the enemy. Society says, hey, if they're our opponent, they're our enemy. Well, you know what? You could be an opponent and still and want that. Nothing better than to beat a friend, right? I mean, you're the most competitive but we're at the end of the day, the game's over. Life continues, right? And so how are you going to continue to be that person? I mean, the gentleman, the young man that you mentioned earlier, he's a great man. He's going to be a great addition to society. He's never going to be defined by a mistake.
No.
And that's what I want. And Jesus we're not defined by Jesus by our mistakes.
No.
We're defined by what he did, not what we did.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, to your point, we compete within the games that we play, but we complete each other when we're outside that with Christ in our heart. Gentlemen,
Absolutely.
great work. Daryl, I know you've got to run, but Coach Manning is going to stick around and talk a little bit about his experience with a walk through Emmaus and some of the extension programs, such as the small groups that the church has built up.
Yep.
Thank you
Great.
for joining.
Great.
Love you, brother.
Love you too.
Love you,
Love
Josh.
you, Coach.
Yep,
Thanks for
appreciate
joining
it.
us.
Yep.
See ya.
Thanks for watching.